Pests are a secret houseplant killer that lots of people suffer with without knowing. So how can you spot if you have a pest problem before it's too late? Well, I'm going to cover the telltale signs that you need to look out for with the most common pests so that you can spot the problem early and take action before you have a plant graveyard in your home. I'll end on what is considered the most invasive pest out there that is a real struggle for people when it comes into their home. Let's start with everyone's favourite houseplant pest, the infamous fungus gnat. The fungus gnat is the most common houseplant pest, and I'm in no doubt that you will have experienced these annoying little creatures buzzing around your plants at some point, if not right now. Thankfully, fungus gnats are completely harmless to plants. They're just incredibly annoying and hard to get rid of. If you don't know, fungus gnats are little flea-like creatures that live in the soil of your houseplants. Don't get them confused with fruit flies. Fruit flies are the ones that constantly fly across your face when you're watching the latest episode of Strictly. Fungus gnats, on the other hand, are weak flyers and will not venture far from the plant. They tend to hop around the soil when disturbed. This is how you can easily spot them. Tap your plant pot or brush your finger over the soil line and you'll no doubt see the little critters scattering across the top. Fungus gnats are incredibly hard to get rid of, and this is all down to their life cycle. The adult gnat will come to your plant and lay its eggs in the soil. The eggs hatch into larvae which live in the top 2 inches of the soil, and then they turn into adults which then lay eggs in the soil, which then hatch into larvae, which then turn into adults, which then lay eggs in the soil.
2 hours later.
To successfully destroy a gnat population, you need to disrupt the life cycle, and this can be tricky. You might think you've got rid of the adults, but secretly, the larvae remain in the soil ready to repopulate the plant again. Start with buying those sticky yellow pads that you can stick into the soil. These catch the adults and give you a good idea of how serious a problem you have. The next battle is to try and keep the top 2 inches of the soil dry. So gnats like a wet top 2 inches of soil to lay their eggs. So if we keep the top of the soil dry, this should deter gnats from entering the soil in the first place. Try bottom watering to achieve this. Gnats feed off fungus in the soil, so we should aim to reduce this as much as possible by collecting dead leaves from the soil line. I've recently been using pure cinnamon on the soil of my plants, which naturally destroys fungus, and I'm seeing some good results. Check out my full video on this. If these solutions don't work, you can then try mosquito bits. I've heard good reviews about this, but I've yet to try it myself because of availability issues in the UK. To really go after the population though, you can try beneficial nematodes. So these are roundworms that live in the soil and are natural enemies of fungus gnats, and you can easily get them online. The problem is, of course, that these pests are so common that you might get rid of the population only to find another invasion in a couple of months. So I'm starting to think it's best to just live with them. What do you think? Another super common houseplant pest is one that lots of people fear, maybe because they've been scarred by films like Arachnophobia. And it's spider mites. Spider mites are tiny arachnids that grow colonies and live on the foliage of your houseplants. These are plant killers because they feed off plant tissue. So it's important we deal with any potential issue before they take over and kill your plant. The problem is that they're so small they can't be seen with the naked eye. So we need to be mindful of the fingerprints they leave behind. The biggest giveaway is the very fine webbing they lay on the underside of the leaves. They don't lay this for catching flies like traditional spiders, but to make pathways to travel around your plant. Don't confuse this with normal spider webbing that might be on your plants. If the webbing travels a long distance from leaf to leaf, then this is probably normal spiders with nothing to worry about. If the webbing is concentrated under a leaf and is really fine, then you have a problem. To be certain, you can shake a couple of leaves over a white sheet of paper, and if you see small specks moving around, then you have mites. You can even grab yourself a magnifying glass and examine the leaves to see if you can see the little buggers sucking away at the sap. Another telltale sign is spotting on the leaves, which is damage caused by the mite sucking the sap from the leaves. The leaves may also be turning yellow due to stress on the plant. If you have a problem, the first thing you should do is isolate the plant from the rest of your collection. You don't want the problem spreading. While spider mites aren't prolific spreaders compared to thrips, which I'll cover in a bit, there is the possibility that they will spread to other plants if we're not careful. The key thing about spider mites is that they thrive in very dry conditions. They hate humidity. If you live in an arid climate, you're much more likely to experience spider mites than if you live somewhere wet like Sheffield. So if we have a spider mite problem on a plant, we need to spray the leaves down with a fast spray, making sure to get all the leaf surface, including the underside. This sprays off the spider mites, and all we need to do is just wipe the leaves down with a cloth and then apply something like neem oil or diluted dish soap to make sure we get them all. Periodically spraying and wiping down the leaves for the next few weeks will help ensure they don't come back. Mealybugs are similar to scale insects and are thankfully easier to spot on our houseplants. They're similar to spider mites in that they suck the sap from the leaves and stems, so they will do long-term damage and eventually kill the plant if left unchecked. They're pests that invade a plant and grow a colony along the stems of the plant. They tend to clump together, so they're quite easy to spot. Look for what looks like little blobs of cotton on the stems and underside of the leaves, as well as sticky honeydew, which comes as a result of them feeding on the plant and encourages the growth of mould. In large numbers, they will gradually turn your plant yellow with leaf curling, so be on the lookout for that. The little blobs of cotton you see on the stems are actually the eggs the female has laid, and it takes a couple of weeks for them to hatch into adults that then dine on your plants, secreting honeydew in the process. The key with mealybugs is prevention. They're attracted to plants with high nitrogen levels and soft growth, so don't overwater or over-fertilise your plants. For bad infestations, cut out any leaves or stems that are affected, and then you can dab the eggs and adults with rubbing alcohol using a cotton bud. This is effective at dissolving the eggs and killing the adults. Much like my spider mite control earlier, you can also spray them off with a strong stream of water to get rid of and control the population. After that, you can treat your plant with an insecticide or neem oil to prevent the mealybugs coming back. Neem oil is great because it disrupts the growth of pests such as mealybugs and spider mites and is not toxic to other beneficial insects. Scale insects are similar to mealybugs, but harder to get rid of. This is because they have a hard outer shell that protects them and locks them in place on the leaf or stem. They're hard to spot because they do a great job of blending in with the foliage of the plant. You want to look for little brown discs on the underside of the leaves, but you'll probably first notice the honeydew that they secrete everywhere as they munch on the leaf tissue of your plant. Like I said, they're tough to get rid of because of their hard outer shell, but just as with mealybugs, a blob of rubbing alcohol with a cotton bud will weaken that shell so that you can just wipe them off or wash them off. This next pest is probably the most damaging and nightmarish pest of them all because once they get into your house, they spread like wildfire and are very hard to control. Can you guess what they are? Yep, thrips. Thrips are tiny black insects that live on and thrive on our indoor plants, growing a colony and destroying the plant in the process. The adult thrips, and in particular the tiny larvae, are very hard to spot and they normally take hold of a plant before the owner has a chance to blink. The larvae live on the underside of the leaves before hatching into adult thrips that then repeat the cycle. They act in the same way as spider mites, scale insects and mealybugs, and that they dine on the sap of our plants, leaving a mottling on the leaves that turn yellow and eventually kill the plant. They work extremely quickly, so before you've even noticed something is up with your plant, they've taken hold and are munching away. Thrips are by far the most prolific pest to spread to your other plants in your house, so you really need to be vigilant in destroying the infestation so the problem doesn't spread. Like with spider mites, a good way to identify if you have thrips is to shake the foliage of your plant over a sheet of white paper and look for tiny black specks moving around. So how do we treat plants for thrips? First, isolate the plant. Hopefully, you'll catch it before it spreads to your other plants. Spray the plant down very thoroughly with a strong stream of water like I mentioned earlier. Be very vigilant and make sure you spray every leaf surface, especially the nooks and crannies. Neem oil and insecticidal soap should help to clear the infestation and stop it from coming back. You need to regularly treat your plant after you've sprayed it for a number of weeks. If you're finding that they keep coming back, or you can't eradicate them entirely, then you can invest in some beneficial insects that are natural predators to thrips. They come in little packs that you hang on your plants, you activate them, and then they go searching for thrips as their food source. They can be expensive, so it's up to you whether you want to go down this route or whether you just decide enough is enough and throw the plant out. Check out this video here where I talk about the amazing uses of cinnamon on houseplants, including pest prevention.